This video is brought to you by Blinkist. Now look, it's not always easy to find the time to sit down and read all of the books that you want to. I know this, I'm a pretty busy dude myself, so I understand that. And I don't read nearly as much as I used to just because I don't have as much time as I used to. But good news, I have Blinkist, which is this app you can download, and in this app, there are 15-minute summaries of all of the best non-fiction books. Indeed, there are 3,000 of them. You can either read or listen to them. I listen 90% of the time because I tend to be, commuting to work or doing something around the house, and I'll just pop it on and get a 15-minute listen. But if you prefer to read, obviously that option is there as well. There are 12 million active users using Blinkist right now to get the best insights and need-to-know info from thousands of books. From self-help to business to health, whatever you're into, it's on there. They've also got excellent curated lists where the Blinkist team and also guests have put together some specific recommendations like how to future-proof yourself or just some of the team over there's favorites. And of course, you can download them, listen to them offline. Indeed, I've got Factfulness, which is a great book that I've actually read, and I've got the summary right here, kind of just a bit of a recap for me. So, the first 100 people to go to Blinkist.com/VisualPolitik. You'll get a week to try it out. You'll also get 25% off if you want the full membership. And again, 7-day trial, cancel at any time. Just go to Blinkist.com/VisualPolitik and let's get into it. Now, we don't have a Wikipedia page yet, but if we ever had one, the truth is that until recently, you could not have accessed that in Turkey. Until January the 15th, 2020, even Wikipedia, the famous website that we all use from time to time to answer questions and that has practically defined an entire generation, was blocked in Turkey.
Turkey removes ban on Wikipedia after almost 3 years. Bloomberg.
The reason? Law 5651 on the regulation of internet publications and combating crimes committed through such publications. Yes, that's the official name, and that's why it's so long. Although they could have summarized it better as the Internet Censorship Act. A law was passed in May 2007 and amended in February 2014 to establish greater control over access to online content. By May 2015, just a year later, the Turkish government had already blocked more than 80,000 websites, and by the end of 2018, that figure had risen to more than 245,000. Yep, that's right, 250,000 pages blocked by the government of a country that is still currently looking to join the European Union. Well, that's probably not going to happen anymore. Now, I'm sure many of you are wondering, why is Turkey so committed to controlling information? What are the reasons for this regression? Well, as you can imagine, our friend Erdogan has got a lot to do with it. You want to know more? Well, let's get into it.
Return of the dictatorship.
If there is one political leader in the Western world who has in recent years changed his opinions, ideas, and messages more than a weather vane, that would be Erdogan. To give you an idea, the Turkish president has spent a few years saying things like this.
We want to prove that a Muslim country can be democratic, transparent, and compatible with the modern world. Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
And then, not so much later, he comes out with something like this.
Democracy is like a train. When you reach your destination, you get off. Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
Surprised? Well, don't think for a moment that Erdogan is one of those guys who is just full of empty threats. Not at all. We are looking at a politician who sometimes does what he says, most of the time when censorship and democratic regression are involved. Take a look at this.
Turkey sentences 24 journalists to prison, claiming terrorism ties. Most of the journalists worked for news organizations that are considered friendly to Fethullah Gulen, a cleric living in seclusion in a small town in Pennsylvania. The Turkish government claims that Mr. Gulen leads a shadowy, violent movement aiming to overthrow President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The New York Times.
This kind of thing is happening more and more frequently in Turkey and only confirms something that virtually no one could argue with. The country, which was once the most advanced and free democracy in the Islamic world, is today on its way to becoming yet another autocracy. Or at least to becoming one of those new political hybrids that have become so fashionable throughout the world, where authoritarianism weighs in far more than democratic fundamentals. And obviously, in order to consolidate such an autocracy in the 21st century, the first thing you have to do is control the internet. That's in the very first chapter of the manual on how to be a dictator. Now, what exactly is going on in Turkey? Is the situation really so serious? Is there any hope of preventing the restrictions on internet freedom from progressing even further? Well, let's find out.
How did it all begin?
Imagine that one day you wake up in the morning and learn that your government has hired hackers to spy on the sites that you visit on the internet. Well, that is pretty much what happens to regular Turkish citizens in 2015. Their government hired a hacking company to control the data traffic of Turkish internet users for more than 3 years. But let's be fair, because this is hardly surprising. Erdogan had some very, very clear plans in mind practically since day one of taking over the reins of Turkey back in 2003. We can start right here with YouTube. In 2008, Turkey blocked this very platform because of videos insulting Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the founder of modern Turkey. The blockade lasted no less than 2 years. So at what point did all of this slip out of the hands of the Turkish president?
Is CNN breaking news.
The breaking news coming out of Turkey right now. Taksim Square, police have just moved in once again, firing tear gas, water cannons.
Well, as I'm sure many of you will remember, between May and August 2013, there were massive protests against the Turkish government that took place in Istanbul's Taksim Square. These protests initially arose with the aim of preventing the destruction of Gezi Park to build a shopping center. Hence, the protests were known as the Gezi Park protests. But the authorities' response was so heavy-handed that what began as a protest to preserve the park quickly ended up becoming a whole movement against government authoritarianism. To give you an idea, at least 22 people died, more than 8,000 were injured, and a further 4,900 were arrested in more than 90 cities throughout the country. This is how the first major social response against the authoritarian Erdogan took place. But what does all of this have to do with cyber authoritarianism? Well, during the protests, the Turkish government closely monitored Twitter's trending topics and had no hesitation in arresting users of the popular social network who posted anything unfavorable about the government. The government also turned off 3G antennas to prevent protesters from coordinating with each other. And you know what? Basically, this was the turning point, the moment when the Turkish leader started to take pleasure in controlling the internet. So, just a short time later, in 2014, Erdogan took advantage of the amendment in Law 5651, which we mentioned at the very beginning of this video, so that just 1 month after its entry into the law, Twitter was blocked.
Twitter website blocked in Turkey, BBC.
As you can see, it's all very, very democratic. And of course, you know how these things go. When a ruler begins to control freedom of expression, censor the internet, and amend the law so he can do what he wants at will, it doesn't happen just once, twice, or 3 times, but it becomes systematic. For example, in February 2020, the Turkish government again blocked access to social media following a Turkish airstrike in Syria.
Turkey blocked social media access for 16 hours after Syria airstrike. Euronews.
These practices are becoming more common, and Turkish citizens no longer are even sure when they'll have access to their social networks and when they won't. While it's true these things do happen in countries like Saudi Arabia or Iran, they are not typical in a country that is supposed to be democratic. In fact, things went so far that Freedom House classified Turkey with a score of 37 out of 100 in network freedom. And although it's had worse records for a few years, keep in mind that countries with scores less than 40 points are considered to have a blocked internet network. And the question is, can we really talk about a democracy in a country where the internet is censored? You should realize that Turkey gets this score not because of online connectivity, which, by the way, would easily score highly in, but because of content control and for constantly violating users' rights, privacy, and the freedom to access content critical of the government and of the state. But what power does the infamous Law 5651 grant to control the network? What's going on in practice in everyday life?
Censorship and its day-to-day effect.
If anything has forever changed the way Turkish people surf the internet, it has been Law 5651. This law, in practice, serves to regulate the Turkish state's censorship of citizens, not only on the internet, but it also controls content on streaming platforms such as Netflix. Yep, that's right, this law states that all content that streams over the internet, such as online radio and television, must be licensed by RTUK, the Radio and Television Supreme Council of Turkey. In fact, major local streaming platforms such as Blue TV or foreign ones such as Netflix had to apply for new licenses in order to continue operating in the country. In this way, the state has been able to screen the platforms and content that might be served, and has subjected its contents to moral standards. Look at one of the paragraphs of the law itself.
The aim of this regulation is to establish the methods and principles to regulate the presentation and provision of radio, television, and on-demand broadcast services, the handling of broadcast licenses to media service providers, the granting of broadcasting authorities to platform administrators, and the supervision of the broadcasts in question. Law 5651.
Well, in the case of Netflix, a platform that has about 1.5 million users in Turkey, in order to continue providing service to them, the US company had to establish a local entity to operate and give 0.5% of the revenue from Turkish users to the government. But that's not even the worst part. Even more controversial is that the content is overseen by a government-dependent body, the Higher Council of Radio and Television, which, among other things, is responsible for protecting public morals, whatever that means. Anyway, that's a snapshot of how things are in Turkey. The hope that a democratic government would end up leading the Middle East has faded at roughly the same rate as Erdogan has emerged as an almighty warlord. Today, it is clear that Turkish internet users have an arduous battle for freedom ahead of them. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please do hit that like button if you did, and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos. Also, please do check out our friends at the Reconsider Media podcast. They provided the vocals in this episode that were not mine. Also, this channel is possible because of Patreon and our patrons on that platform. Please consider joining them and supporting our mission of providing independent political coverage. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.
If you want to learn more about politics and world affairs and hear some more of my lovely voice, come check out the Reconsider podcast, where we don't do the thinking for you. Find Reconsider at www.reconsidermedia.com or on Apple or Google Play or your favorite podcast.